Welcome back to Steel and Vance. This is a big topic.
Well, I think that it's probably safe to say that there's not a female journalist alive who hasn't received online harassment. On Twitter, on the email, phone calls, you name it. But this one has had her own story that has just been blowing up this week. First of all, tell us about your case, because on Friday, we were in court to see the resolution, which was somewhat disappointing, but we'll get to that in a minute.
We will. Okay, first of all, I took this photo of the courthouse, and I want to show this because this was like walking in at 9 o'clock in the morning last Friday, the end of a very long journey to get to this courthouse. And I want to point out that Linda, along with a number of other familiar names, this was after spending a couple hours in that building. I've got, Drex, Marcella Bernardo, my cousin Shirlene Vance, Eric Chapman, Linda there, of course. I apologize to Lisa Butler, my good friend Lisa, it's the only photo I had. Sorry, Lisa, your eyes are closed. But having that example of people around me during this time has been amazing. And as you said, there are no people in the public eye who haven't had pushback at some point in some way. But this, for me, what I experienced over the last 7 years was extra. This individual, who I'd never met until Friday, targeted me in ways that were remarkable. He would Photoshop a communist flag onto my face. He would go anywhere online that my name was mentioned, and he would scream the fake news lines. It all pretty much started when Donald Trump came down an escalator, and then it escalated during COVID. And he wouldn't just email me, because I blocked him. Everybody asked me that, Linda. Why didn't you just block him? I did. And at first he used his real name, Richard Oliver, and then he would change it up. I would block him and he'd come up with another email address, and they got more and more sexualized and more violent. And then he would send them to my colleagues like Linda. Linda was getting these emails, hundreds and hundreds of them over years. You even went up the food chain and went like, are you seeing this? He hated
all of us, but he hated you the most.
Yeah.
And he had little rotten nicknames for all of us. And I was watching this stuff, and finally I'm talking to the boss saying, are you guys doing anything about this?
Thank you.
Like, what are you doing to block this guy, find this guy, stop this guy? It's not okay. And if I recall, the boss kind of went, well, there's not really much we can do. And I thought, maybe not motivated enough. This is sort of why the police don't do anything, I think.
They said, the bosses said, or the executives said, you should, I guess, call the non-emergency line of the police. And I did that. I kept everything unknowingly because I had blocked him. When I finally got through to the police, I'll abbreviate my story somewhat because it's been a long road, let me tell you. I opened my trash of my email, and it was just a sea. It still makes me a little bit ill to remember that moment when I opened up that, because you can block it only so long. And then this individual made the error of mentioning my son in one of the emails, and that's when the police were like, okay, because my son was just a wee lad at the time, and I was terrified for him the whole time. I was struggling to try and figure out who this was, but because he was emailing everybody, Jesse Miller at Mediated Reality received one of these emails. In fact, I was copied in on a death threat to Dr. Bonnie Henry from him, and that activated a whole other level. So all of these things started happening, and Jesse phoned me and said, grab a pencil, and I started writing down name, address, phone number, all of it. And Linda, I resisted the urge to call him, write to him, chastise him, do all the things that you feel like you want to protect yourself. I did none of that. I followed all the rules. I'd never said his name out loud until last Friday when I met him in court. I met him in court, and there was a journalist in court, and a lot of people came at me suddenly to hear this story, and I'm grateful to all of them. I want to roll through some of the headlines here. Vancouver is Awesome being the first that really recounts what happened in court, because Jeremy was there, and he was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening to you and you and the women journalists, and particularly the women of color. Like, I have been harassed in this way for years, but what we're seeing, the escalation that is just, I mean, Erica Eiffel comes to mind. Rachel Gilmore comes to mind. It is astounding. Robin Crawford at City News did a story as well, speaking to the sentence or lack thereof, and then
we'll talk about that, because he basically is not going to jail.
No,
he's essentially. Yeah, is that a fair characterization?
Very fair. Very disappointing. A joint assessment, joint submission was put forward, and we'll get into that with our guest coming in, who's a former Crown prosecutor, by the way. Just want to point out, Gary Mason at the Globe and Mail wrote a column about the 3 words that the court wouldn't allow me to say to my online abuser. I had my victim impact statement, which you were there. Oh, I'm so grateful for you being there. But you want to know what they told me I couldn't say? 3 words. Shame on you.
And I said, you should have said it anyway. Why can they stop? It's your victim impact statement. You should be able to say exactly what you want.
I regret it. I regret not saying it. I thought I was behaving because the court would serve me, that justice would be served. I was wrong. It wasn't. But the attention that it is garnering now hopefully will find a way to get toward change. What I want for change is swift and meaningful consequences for others. I want deterrence. I want people like this man. I want people like this man to know that you do this and you will immediately have consequences for your actions. It's time for our system to grow up. And I've been tweeting about it. I'm pushing it out there ad nauseum. I'm sure people are sick of it. But some people are hearing me, like our premier, who not only read Gary Mason's column, but quote tweeted it and said to anyone who attacks journalists for doing their job, to anyone who anonymously spreads toxic vitriol, to anyone who targets the children of someone you disagree with, shame on you. He used my words. I appreciate that. And then he replied directly to that to me and other journalists who are experiencing this kind of harassment. We stand with you. I replied to that. Check your email inbox, because once I take a breath, I'm coming for that support, please, because I need it.
Yeah, well, let's bring in Sandy Garacino, who is a friend of both of ours. Both of us have had her on our various radio shows many, many times. Sandy Garacino is a former Crown prosecutor. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us.
So happy to be here and happy to see both of you.
Yes. You know what, though? I kind of feel like, as much as you're my hero, that you took it that far. Sandy, the message I got from what happened in court and the sort of result or the non-result from this long ordeal was that I would never bother. I just wouldn't bother in the future trying to go after someone who's harassing me criminally online.
Absolutely. And that is one of the things that really concerns me about what happened, because I, like many others, Jody, was watching your Twitter account. I was watching from a distance. I was out of the city and watching you go into court. And I was very hopeful for you and understood that there was a plea agreement. And then I was really quite astonished. You know, when you're in the moment, you don't necessarily see it. But me having done many plea bargains, plea agreements, and lots of sentencing, I was really quite astonished, because I can't quite imagine less of an impact. I don't know how much viewers are going to know, but Richard Oliver was sentenced. He got a conditional discharge, which means that if he completes without incident his 1 year of probation, that's 1 year is all he gets, that he has to go into the penalty box for a year and not contact Jody Vance and not contact the other named individuals for a year. And then once he is factually completes that, he just has to go for a few more years under the Criminal Records Act, and then he automatically has no criminal record at all. And this is so below the standard of what these circumstances called for. I was also concerned to read the transcript of the submissions of Crown Counsel, where all that was alluded to, viewers will have heard Jody talk about the many years from 2015 to late 2020 of this constant harassment, this barrage of harassment, loss of income from not doing appearances that she otherwise would have engaged in, cost of installing additional security, concern for her child, ways that this affected her life. That was not part of the Crown's submission. The Crown alluded to detailed only about 100 emails over a 6-month period. That's just within the period of time that the indictment refers to. But had this gone to trial, or had this been appropriately, in my view, dispensed with, the judge would have heard of the years of campaign, a premeditated, deliberate, malicious campaign of harassment that extended beyond Jody Vance and to many other people. And we all are familiar with, we know that this is happening in the media environment. But Premier Eby put his finger on it when he said he's talking about journalists doing their job. You know, we were going through a global pandemic. The last time I was in a room with you, Linda, was at the very beginning of the pandemic. And what is more important than that journalists and media figures who are informing the public and having to deal with controversy are free and able to do that without fear for their own personal safety. And that's not happening right now. And in my view, it's had to go much further, much further.
So what should have happened, and where do we go from here? If you can get in your mind, what is possible? Because I was like, we need to change the laws. And you went, oh, it's not the laws.
No, I think that and Linda, you may have some insight or experts that you could bring on to talk about policing capacity. I think that we really, really need to, and I'm not an expert in policing, but it does appear to me, Jody, from your story, that if you had not had Jesse Miller's assistance identifying the perpetrator here, this wouldn't have gone any further. And I've certainly heard from many other women journalists that the police, there's just way too much of it. It's far beyond the police ability to control. But a lot of this, I think, has to do with our IT. Police have to be, we need to have police that are dedicated specialists. We're in the cyber world now, and there's the suicides, the huge amount of impact, not just on journalists. I see Amanda Todd as part of the continuum that this is involved with. I also see cybercrime and all the spamming that's going on that people basically know that the police have no answers for. Well, I think we really have to start to beef up on our cyber capacity in policing. But more importantly, in this particular type of case, the Attorney General has a lot, and the senior Crown, the Regional Crown Counsel, have a lot of capacity here to make sure that this is dealt with by senior prosecutors who are experiencing, who understand the situation that they're in. And it's my belief, based on the description that I'm seeing, that this should perhaps have been escalated to senior Crown to develop policy about how we're going to deal with sentencing on these cases.
Amen. Great thoughts. We could talk about this forever, and I'm sure we'll talk about it going forward. Sandy Garacino, former Crown prosecutor, thank you so much for your insights. Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks, guys.
I'll be calling you later for more of a debrief, Sandy. And also, speaking of later, we're going to have more mind-blowing stories for you in What the Hell is Wrong with People, our segment that everybody loves, because we're calling out, putting a call out to you to identify a prolific thief in our midst.
Yes, and Sandy mentioned Amanda Todd. Still ahead is your teen being sextorted online. Sextortion cases are spiking in BC. Teenage boys are actually the main target. We've got some expert advice on protecting your family next.